Good. There was a question that came to me, and a lot of people benefit from, and someone asked, what's the time? Okay. Someone asked, can you explain what the relationship or what desire or attachment for love, how that fits into the notion of non-doership? How desire or attachment to love fits into the notion of non-doership. And what I sometimes say is that so in answering that question, so I'll repeat it, the question was, can you please explain how the desire for love or the attachment to love, effectively that's the same thing, just using different words, can you explain how the desire for love relates to the notion of non-doership, which is what's put forward so often here, the belief in non-doership. And it's important to understand that the belief in doership, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, the belief of doership has two arms to it. The first arm is the belief in personal doership, and the second arm is that my completeness, my happiness is to be found in outcomes, in pleasure. So that's what we've just been speaking about. Now, what I often mention is that the attachment to pleasure ultimately stems from the deepest attachment, which is the attachment to love. And why the attachment to love is there is going back to what I started off with, which is this deeply ingrained belief that I'm not good enough. The original error that's been put in place into humanity, into this life experience, that I'm not good enough. And so when we feel shame or I'm not good enough, the feeling is telling us you're not lovable. And what a feeling tells us is what the answer is. The feeling says, this is the feeling, and in the feeling it tells us what the answer is. But because the feeling is an error, the feeling is based on a mistake, the answer that the feeling gives us is also an error. And so when we feel not good enough, that we're not lovable, the answer is find out that you're lovable. That's what it drives us to do. So often, in practical terms, people are craving for a relationship, craving for a soulmate, because that's what the feeling is telling them the answer is. It says, when you find your soulmate, everything will be okay. And where that feeling is coming from, when you find your soulmate, everything will be okay, is a deeper feeling that says, I'm not lovable. And then that feeling creates the solution, find a soulmate. If you find a soulmate, it means you are lovable. And if you are lovable in experience, then this feeling must be wrong and it will dissolve. And we know intuitively that this feeling that I'm not lovable is deeply uncomfortable. So once again, it's an uncomfortableness with oneself. And as I see it, it's the root of human suffering. It's the root of the personal self-image. And so this attachment to love, which when we look at our own experience, invariably we'll find it. And all the other attachments to other forms of pleasure are essentially attachments to love. So if we are successful and we can show the world that we are successful, then we'll be appreciated by the world for our success. And if we're appreciated by the world for our success, finally we will be loved. And if we're loved, then this deep, deep feeling of not being lovable will be proved to be wrong, and it will dissolve. And the irony is that we don't need the world to love us in order to be complete. The completeness already exists. It's just that it's covered up by this error of who we are. The error drives us to seek happiness out there. It drives awareness outward in exactly the opposite direction to where the solution will be found. And so the dissolving of the error, the dissolving of the belief, which starts up at the higher levels of our conscious experience, meaning awareness starts landing on why we want success, why we want material gain, why do we want to buy that new car or the new clothes and look a certain way, essentially so that we can feel like we are good enough and good enough for the other to love us. This is not absolute. There's nothing wrong with cutting your hair and buying a pair of clothes, some clothes that you like, that you look good in. But that will probably happen when the sense of personal doership falls away. And when the sense of personal doership is there, there's likely to be this motivation behind certain things. That is a motivation of trying to gain love from the other. So the issue here is not the act of buying clothes, or it's more the attachment to what we think will come from achieving something. And so a lot of our motivation, when we look at it, we can see, actually it stems back to being lovable. So even arguing to be right, defending against another's attack or criticism, wanting the other to do things that we want, because if they do what we want, then it means that they respect us, it means that they love us. So this feeling attacked when the other doesn't deliver what we want is there because ultimately it's an attack on me by you not loving me. And so the answer in short is that this attachment to desire, the attachment to love, is very much linked to this idea of identity of being the doer, and it fits under this category of belief that my completeness is to be found in outcomes, and the outcome that we believe will complete us the most is the outcome of love. And as I mentioned, that is not the solution, it's the imagined solution. And when those beliefs fall away, what we find is left in the absence of any belief is what we truly are. We rest in being and we find, there I am again. And I don't need anyone to confirm me, because I know I am. I am independent of what the other thinks of me, independent of whether the other behaves a certain way, independent of whether the other appreciates me or not. I am. So in wrapping it up, we don't need to go anywhere. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to wait for some magical time in the future. That what we always have been and what we always will be, what will be realized at some point, is here right now. There's no reason why it can't be seen right now, although, depending on destiny, that's the reason why it is or it isn't. But when it's seen, there never was anywhere to go. There never was anything to do. There never was anyone to correct, anyone to improve. The core of our being, meaning the essence that is there in each moment, that creates the sense, I am, whatever is added on to the I am, There's, if I ask the question, are you dead? You don't need to think about it. Your experience tells you, no, I am. Or we would say, I am alive. But the reason why we say we're alive is because there's this I amness that's functioning all the time. And the second aspect of our being is the function of awareness, which means the function that sees my hand right now, that sees any object. So when daily life experience is being had during the day, there is awareness all the time of whatever the objects are. So even if the awareness is of excessive thinking, there is complete awareness of the obsessive thinking. And then if from the obsessive thinking we look at the clock or the children, there is awareness of the clock and the children. So there can't be awareness of anything in the absence of the core of who we are, which is the consciousness of Source. And if we realize that, then we will realize that I have to be here. I am here. It's strange when you think about it, where this process in its most intense form creates the sense that I'm lost. I need to find myself. As though there are two, one that's looking and the one that's lost. And I realize, where could I have gone? I can't go anywhere. I am me. The thing is that the core of the important core is not recognized as the awareness and the sense of existence, because of the identification in the form that you were speaking of, because of the identification with what is happening in the flow of life, identification with the beliefs and the thoughts, this is who I am. And so the very subtle, they're not actually that subtle, they're ever present, unchanging, the quiet aspects of the experience, the sense of being and the function of awareness get overlooked. And so self-realization is the self-realizing itself as the function of awareness and as the function of being. That's the consciousness becoming conscious of itself, or awareness becoming aware of itself. And it's here right now for everyone. No one is missing anything for complete happiness in daily living, because all that is needed is the core that is functioning through everyone at every moment, to know that there's just an obstacle in the way of that, and the obstacle is beliefs, and the way that the beliefs dissolve is when awareness lands on them. And landing on the belief is hard because the belief is deeply ingrained. Landing on the manifestation of the belief, the flower of the belief, is much easier. The flower of the belief is guilt, blame, pride, worry, and expectation. Awareness lands on that, asks, why is this happening? It becomes very clear that there's a story, and we see at the root of the story the belief in personal doership and attachment to outcomes. So, thank you, everyone.